Good morning. Welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live on YouTube. The video recording will be our record of the hearing. We're here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 17413, which is 333 Casal Place. I'll start by introducing the panel, and then I'll ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I'll explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Peter Moreland-Giraldo. I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are...
Good morning, Anita Ferlin.
Tanya Foubert.
Does anyone have any objections to the panel as constituted? I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. So you just come up to the microphone and make sure that we can hear your voice on the record.
I'm Kelly Vanderbeek. I'm the complainant who lives at that tax roll that you just mentioned, 333 Casale Place, and Canmore local for a long time.
I'm Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore. I apologize. I have Grayson Bannerman helping me out today.
Thank you. The LARB standard practice is to first have the complainant present all of their evidence, followed by questions from the respondent and the board. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and then the panel. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break, or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those things as we go. I'll also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off any mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process that I just laid out? We've received exchange disclosure evidence prior to this hearing, and to save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. And if any such questions arise, we can deal with them and strike material from the record if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with that procedure? Yeah. If we could have those read into the record, please.
Thank you. For tax roll 17413, we have received complainant package marked C1. It's the complaint form of 2 pages. For complainant package marked C2, it's the complainant disclosure, 9 pages plus an audio file, and respondent package marked R1, respondent disclosure of 49 pages.
Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Vanderbeek, we're ready to hear your evidence if you're ready to go ahead.
First up, not a lawyer, never done this, no clue what I'm doing, but I'm willing to jump in. I have actually done an assessment complaint before, and I did win that review back in 2020. It was a very different process. I dealt with a guy who came over, and we chatted. He looked at the situation, said, okay, that sounds good, and agreed, and that was it. And so when I complained this time, I was quite surprised at the change in the structure. It was, I won't lie, exceptionally intimidating. Where I was like, okay, I don't do this for a living. Y'all are getting pretty good at this because you're part of council. You do a lot of things like this, and this is obviously their profession. And to also set the stage, I actually thought the town of Canmore reviewed and did all that. I didn't realize it was an outside company that was hired to do this. That's based in St. Albert, and they've been lovely to deal with, I have to say. But it was a different system than I had anticipated, and I didn't quite understand until I got into this process. First up, it was about 6 years ago. Yeah, it wasn't about, it was exactly 6 years ago. It's one of the pieces that I entered into evidence. I won't even pull it up here right now because it's number 8 in the documents that I presented or that I submitted. It was just to show some email correspondence, essentially just to give an example of the fact that, yes, I did challenge, and he just came and we met in person and everything was done in person. So I didn't have an actual record of winning that assessment review. Nothing in paper. He got approved and then my numbers went down, and so I was like, okay, great. We purchased our home at 333, this tax roll, in 2012. So we've been there now for quite a while, and that first assessment review that I pushed for in 2020 was 8 years after we purchased our home. And it was about roughly 6 years after we purchased our home where I sort of went, whoa, these assessments just don't align with the value of our home. And it was becoming unsettling, and it took about 2 years for that unsettling to bubble over for me to challenge. Well, we're now at that 6 years again, where I'm like, okay, it's starting to feel inaccurate. And I'm starting to see a pattern of that. And my goal, so I just wanted to start by saying my goal is to never come back here again. I don't want to waste your time. You were very clear that this is not what they want to be doing either. It's not what you want to be doing. It's not what I want to be doing. Everybody's getting paid to be here except me. This is not what I want to do with my time. So my goal of all of this is to present a case strong enough so that moving forward, it's lasting. It lasts beyond this. And I'm not arguing for my specific home. I'm arguing for a few groups of homes because they are a specific subset within what's happening on the street and within the assessed values. And so that's essentially the premise of my argument. And I'm going to break it down into a couple areas. Sound good? Okay. I don't know if we're interacting at all. Sorry. Okay. To start off, why did it not open? I might have to sign into the internet. Sorry, everybody. Is there no code or anything? It just opens? Well, I just did this at home and it's right here. Okay, whatever. I'll go to Dropbox Online. Never seen that before. Oh, you guys aren't seeing it, are you? It's saying Apple could not verify the document. Have you ever seen that before?
No.
Apple could not verify the document. It's just a PDF. I literally went through it this
Did
morning.
you get onto the internet here to open?
Here, let me just,
there
it says that it's on, but let me just see if it's actually on. Yeah, so it's on. So I'll just go to Dropbox. I can go online and just pull it up there. Sorry, everyone. It won't take me long.
Are you pulling up information that's in your disclosure?
Yeah.
Because we all have it in front of us as well.
Oh, okay. I still want to, just for my own reference, to be able to have that sort of process, I suppose. Okay, so this is the first thing I wanted to discuss, is just the Canmore bylaw. So there's three issues with our property for the valuation. There's noise, the land valuation, and then the layout. So those are the three items that I want to discuss. And those are the three topics that affect the value of our home: is noise, the layout of our home, as well as the land. We have a very large lot, apparently. So those are the three things I want to talk about, and then I'm going to get into the unique groupings. So like I said, I'm not here to discuss my specific home. I want to actually talk about some groupings within my street that are unique. In fact, a whole section of my street is affected by this bylaw. So if you look, are you able to put it up?
It's straining what's on, so it's not actually reading. Are you able to put up this?
Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is my street. So Casale comes down and then it splits in half and then you have two roundabouts at the end. All of those homes in gray are affected by a bylaw. The star I put on, that's my addition to show where our home is. All of those homes that are highlighted or accentuated, they're affected by this bylaw, which essentially, this was Canmore's first attempt at, I don't know if it was their first attempt, sorry, I don't have enough knowledge. It was one of their attempts at low-income housing. So this bylaw was to ensure that these homes remain low-income housing. So more accessible. And they were also mandated the entire street was mandated to have suites available so that they were legally made so that you could have an A and a B, and they were designed in a way that you could have the suite option. And so that's what's unique about this street. I didn't actually know about this bylaw until 3 years ago when friends who became friends, they bought a home across the street from us. They purchased it, the realtor, even during the purchasing time, they had contractors come in, they looked at what they could do, the land that you're allowed to build on, all the things. They were gonna do an extension. They bought the home. Within a year, they submitted their plans to do an extension, and then the town came back and said, oh no, there's this bylaw, you can't get bigger than a certain size. And you're at the size. And so they're like, oh, wait a second, what? Nobody told us in this whole process. So they actually listed it, and they were listed for almost an entire year, pulled it off, it didn't sell, listed it again, and they've actually just sold. So their sale price is not a part of this, but it was an indication of this bylaw is not shared. People buying homes don't know about it. I'm not telling people. If I'm about to sell my home, I'm not telling them about this bylaw. Realtors sure as hell ain't telling them about this bylaw. We're the only 16 homes in the entire in all of Canmore affected by this bylaw. So we can't build to the size of whatever's allowable within your land, which really reduces the value of your land because you can't use it. So having more land generally means you can have a certain amount of extension and building, and you can utilize that land how you see fit up to a point. We have rules for that for the entire town. But these little homes, for whatever reason, have their own bylaw, which again, not a single owner in this entire neighborhood knew about it. We went from house to house and asked until this group tried to do a renovation that was over 200,000 square feet. And they're like, actually, you're already at the limit. We would maybe approve something at that 100 square feet, but they wanted to do about a 400, 500 square foot extension. Okay, so that's this unique grouping that includes that whole section. Now, I talked about a few different things, right? Noise was another thing I wanted to talk about. So a subset within that grouping, I can use my mouse, I don't have like a laser pointer here, but if you see that, again, I did the star, this is where our home is. So there's a subset within this grouping of homes that are in that bylaw. There's about, I would say probably 6 homes, but 5 to 6 homes in this area are specifically and aggressively affected. We're essentially on a very busy road, Three Sisters Parkway, equivalent to sort of Benchlands Trail. Of course, now with 20 years ahead of us of tons of construction, now that Three Sisters is there, it's massive trucks and dump trucks and stuff that'll be going through for probably 15 to 20 years. But that's actually not the issue. Those 6 homes are Highway 1. So the rest over here, there's huge apartment buildings. That's apartment complexes, there's big buildings, they're 3 stories high. And then over here on the other street, this is a different street, it's not affected by us, but they have all of these berms that are actually built up to block the noise of Highway 1. Right here, there are no berms, there are no apartment buildings, there is nothing. Highway 1 also comes the closest. A wider shot would show actually Highway 1 peels away as well. So Highway 1 from this home to Highway 1 is almost a kilometer. Us to Highway 1 is about 600 meters. But there's nothing to block the noise whatsoever. So we have 2 roads, one of them being Highway 1. So there's the subset of the bylaw, then there's the subset of this cluster of homes that are uniquely affected by this noise. I guess I'll get into now how much. I'm actually gonna come back to this picture a couple times, just so you guys are aware. There's the red circles that show what blocks the noise from the other places. There's also this orange line, which I didn't address. There's not enough parking over here for Crossbow, these apartment buildings. So they all come, they cross the street here, and then they go through the backyards, and then they go to where they park either on our street or on Fitzgerald's Rise. Fitzgerald's Rise doesn't allow parking in the winter, so they park on our street. So our street is full of cars for half the year, and the rest of the time they're on Fitzgerald's Rise. But the path behind our homes, that orange line, is a very aggressively used path. I would say we have probably 5 people go through our backyard with dogs or whatever, but just 5 people per hour, all day. That's a pretty normal amount of traffic walking through our backyard. And again, I will come back to this again, that image. These are just images to show, these are the land dunes, the one side, to show that what they look like to block noise from further down the road there. This is from our backyard. You have literally a direct view of Three Sisters Parkway as well as Highway 1. I'm standing on my back deck, which is on the first floor. So our kitchen and our living room is on the first floor, and we have a walkout basement, and so we have a deck there. And that's the view from our deck. I don't think you guys need to listen to this. It doesn't really matter. I bought a decibel reader. I wrote out the little form and I challenged on the assessed thing, and my husband's like, that's enough. You filled out the form, you wrote down the points you want to talk about, and it's an oral presentation. I was like, yeah, but they keep talking about evidence and rebuttals and this, and I'm like, it sounds like it's going to be a court of law. And he's like, yeah, but you wrote it down and you're presenting verbally. He's like, you can just talk, you're not a lawyer. I'm like, that's fair, but I feel like I should be a bit more lawyerly and prepared. And he's like, okay, well, I don't know, do what you got to do. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of went with it. Anyways, got a decibel reader. Tried to create evidence because I'm like, what the hell? I don't know. So my evidence is our backyard is 50% louder than the people across the street. So we have a decibel across the street, a home I'm going to get into, the 330. The people that bought tried to build an extension, all the things, couldn't because of the bylaw. Their backyard, and I chose a time that was not the busiest. I didn't choose rush hour. I tried to avoid trucks. So as a normal middle of the afternoon, the 2 times are between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Their backyard is 40 decibels, which is considered a nice quiet backyard, and it is. That's exactly what it feels like. And it pretty much stays that sound all the time. There's no variance. Our backyard, at an average, when you have no trucks going by, is 60 decibels, is the average. So it's 50% more. That's a lot louder. That's considered a loud backyard. And when trucks go by, and I didn't actually even put this in there because I feel like, well, that might not be considered the normal, the average, because trucks don't go by all the time. They certainly go by a lot, but it goes to 75 decibels when a truck goes by on the Three Sisters Parkway. And when they go by on Highway 1, it's actually the same impact because they're so much louder because of the speed. So there's that. We don't need to listen to them because it just sounds like noise. Okay, property assessment for the comparable houses. So here, I specifically look at 333. This is the home across the street from us. So I talked about noise, I talked about land. Land is not as valuable when it has highway noise. Land is not as valuable when you can't use the land. So now I want to talk about layout. So this is across the street from us. So these are the people with the backyard. I did ask their permission before I went in their backyard to measure their decibel meters, and literally it was the funniest text back. They're like, okay, this is the weirdest text I've ever gotten in my life. You want to go in my backyard and measure the sound? I'm like, yes, I do. Okay, so this house, on average, I would say homes, I'll go back to this. I said I would go back to, this is a different picture, but I'll go back to my picture just because. So this home, see where my star is? That's where we are. Across the street, that's where 333, so that's the 330. That's the one we're going to talk about right here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this cluster of homes on this side of the street as its own subset, okay? Part of it is the highway noise. So they all have really nice, beautiful, quiet backyards. This whole section, they're also affected by the bylaw, but they aren't affected by the noise, okay? On average, this side of the street, when they list their home, let's say 2 homes on both sides of the street listed at the same time, the side with the highway noise takes about 3 times as long to sell. It's just because there's highway noise, honestly. There's also a layout reason, and I'm about to get to the layout reason. But it takes about but there is no part of the assessment board that looks into how long a home takes to sell, how long it sits on the market. I know for ourselves, we bought in 2012, and we bought it for $680,000. The assessed value was over $800,000. That is a very common thing within our side of the street. So going back to, so our home is valued at 1.701, so 1.7 million. And then this one across the street that tried to do the extension, it's currently valued at 250,000 less than ours, 1.544. I'm not here to try and argue our home is a specific. I want to talk about the subset within the whole side of my street. So I'm going to get into more details. But the valuation, and they also sold, they were actually their home, and that sale price is part of the cluster that is used as the evaluation for helping decide what my home is valued at. Problem is my home has more land, and so it gets valued more. My home has a walkout basement, which gets more value for. It doesn't have 2 kitchens, my home. Theirs does. That should get more value, but that's a huge difference, especially when on average that side of the street sells for $150,000 at this current, so 10%, roughly 10% more across the street than our side of the street. That's just kind of, highway noise sells, it's roughly a 10% difference. And when we bought our home, that aligned perfectly. We bought $680 across the street, one sold for $730, another one sold for $760 within 6 months. So we're in that 10%, that's in that $70,000 back then, when 10% was a very different number than 10% now. So that's why I use a percentage, because it's actually a better way to evaluate what things sell for. So a 10% reduction on our side of the street for the highway noise stands to reason now as well. But that's the difference in valuation there. Here, 333 versus 205. So 205 I have a unique relationship with. 205 is actually on our side of the street. So our valuation is, it's only 19,000, well, no, exactly 20,000 more. So still, we're valued at 20,000 more than 205 Casale. So why do I know so much about 205? I actually bought it. I owned it, we renovated it, and then sold it. We fixed it up. It had pink tile. It looked freaking awful. So we fixed it up. It looked prettier. We just changed the tile. We fluffed it up. We did backsplash. We added some lighting, all those kinds of things. But we also took out the kitchen because we changed the layout in the basement. And it's up here. 205 is this home right here. So 205 is actually the very last to fit in the bylaw. Still fits in the bylaw though. Their layout is the first home out of all these homes over here that has a walkout basement but doesn't have an idiotic hallway. And let me explain. So all these homes, not the homes across the street and not 205, the homes across the street in 205, they were forced to have basement suites. Go ahead.
There's been some new information, such as the hallway and things like that, that weren't addressed in your disclosure, and I just ask you to keep it to information that's been disclosed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Except I have it here. Wait a second, where I just was. Number 4, nope. Sorry, everybody. I should just leave them all open because then I can look at it more quickly. I talk about the layout. It's one of the subsets. Oh, right, I can't open from here. There's something wrong with my story. Thank you. So here, was denied bylaw, listed then, marked on the, relisted, it remains not marked. They're both roughly 200 square feet above grade. Backyard noise, lower than backyard. Oh, I didn't write about the layout.
No, you haven't written about the layout. So if you could just refrain to what you have in your actual disclosure documents.
So, okay, I can talk about the square footage though?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay,
That's all that's
so then I'll talk about the square footage in relation to how the square footage affects the layout. So that home across the street, again, not a bloody lawyer, not a professional, just doing this. Here we go. Okay, so I did talk about the layout in the sense of the square footage, so I'll talk about that specifically. And the above grade, which is actually what I'm getting into. So it being above grade, this home across the street, as well as 205, their entrance to the suite, which was the low-income mandation, 205, the entrance to the suite is right here in the front. It's underneath the front, I don't know if you guys can see my little mouse moving. So it's essentially, they're coming into their suite right there. They go down 3 steps, they go into their suite. A lot of the other ones on the side, the quiet side of the street, I'll call it, or on the side of the house, they go right into the suite. So they're going in at the basement, essentially, right? They're walking in at their basement. 205, here, there as well, it has a walk down the side of the house. You go down and you go into the basement suite. So you walk on the side of the house. Every other home on the noisy side of the street, for whatever idiotic reason, they decided that the suite entrance was going to be on the main floor. And you'd have to have a shared space to then go to the basement suite or upstairs. And the square footage, again, this place here, 240 square feet above grade. Their suite, they don't have a well, they kind of have a walkout basement in the sense that there's an entrance, but it's not considered a walkout basement. Upstairs is 200 square feet more of space upstairs. Every single person in this whole subset of homes of the bylaw has a basement renter, except for us, and I'll explain why. They all have basement renters because you can't afford your home without it. We happen to buy at $680,000, so we're lucky as. But everybody has a basement suite, and I would rent our basement if our basement wasn't almost half of our square footage of our home. So 240 square feet, when it's added into a kitchen and into the living area, means you can have 2 full couches. You can have a kitchen that's a little bit more normal feeling, and it's connected to the same area. Ours is actually an L-shaped space. Our upstairs is 1,200 square feet, and the downstairs is 900 square feet. If you're renting a 1-bedroom suite, and it's over 900 square feet, anybody who buys these homes, they're living on the upstairs, they're renting out the basement. So you don't have access to your backyard because your rental is your basement. It's a huge size for rental. The renters are freaking killing it. If you can rent one of those walkout basements on our side of the street, you should do it. I highly recommend it. They have a beautiful amount of space. And so you go from a massive difference in the square footage for the owners of the home. So having the walkout basement is not a attractant. It doesn't add to the value of the home to the buyers because the buyers aren't freaking using it. They're renting it out and they're actually pissed off at how big it is. And the whole section that we're in, the entrance is on the main floor, so you have a stupid shared entrance, which again, nobody uses. So you have this weird, awkward hallways in order to access it, and so the square footage is affected, which again makes the walkout basement not a value add, makes the noisy backyard not a value add, and the land, because of the bylaw, not a value add. So these things are massive value adds, and yet they aren't value adds because we're a unique subset. The whole point of this thing is to primarily consider assessed value reflects the market value, grouping similar properties to home. Each property has specific characteristics. I agree. And I'm not saying my property uniquely, I'm saying this whole subset. We have 6 homes that are uniquely hit by noise of Highway 1. And then we have the end of the street all the way to just before 205 that are uniquely hit by a subset of a stupid-ass design. So you have these huge basements that go to renters. I want to rent my basement. I can't give up that much space. If we rent to our suite, we will have to reorganize the layout because I have a family. I need that extra bedroom. I'll rent out 600 square feet of a 2,400 square foot house, not 950 square feet to a basement renter. He agrees. So I'll stick to what I had, the 240 square feet. So noise, land, layout. Things that are check boxes, again, I'll come back to, my entire goal is I don't want to come back here every 6 years. Because what happens is you become normalized, you get assessed, you get reassessed, you get normalized to what happens around. I'm really done with coming back here. I don't like this. So this group of 5 homes, 6 homes, I would call it 6 homes, are affected by Highway 1. All the homes up until just before this one at 205, they all have basement renters that have a shared space to get into it, and the basements are huge. And so you're renting too much of your space as an owner to a renter. You also don't have access to your backyard because the walkout basement, and again, the renter gets it. So in order to have it, you need stairs. My home doesn't have stairs. My home also doesn't have 2 kitchens. 2 kitchens are supposed to be a value add. I have 1 kitchen. And the reason it seems to happen every 6 years is because of the average, the way the system works. I don't want to come back again. So these homes all beside me, I'm just, the first home I'm not sure, but I know, I talked to Steve, Steve's part of your company, and he was lovely to work with. He's like, well, we really don't like to rat out our neighbors. I'm like, I'm not ratting out our neighbors. I'm just saying that I'm part of a subset that these are included. Why am I valued at so much more? And so I looked into it. This home right here where my little mouse is on, that's valued at about 100,000 less. This one's valued at about 25,000 less. And then the home to the left of me, that's valued at almost 100,000 more than mine. And again, guess which one sold the most recently? That one, and then that one. And so they just get held down a little while, and it's like, okay, never mind, we're not gonna look at your sale price anymore. So every time a home sells in this little cluster, it drops the price like crazy because we sell for less than our home valuations, our home assessments. And that's wrong, that's not the way of the system. And so I really hope the ARB and Mr. Chair, you guys can take this information, take what you want with it. I will be back here. And I also, like they agree with the noise. They actually, they offered a $70,000 reduction, which is all that the checkbox gives me. It doesn't address, so it gave me $70,000 reduction, which again, when I purchased the house, a 10% reduction, that's enough. That was enough to address the issues. A 10% reduction for our little cluster was enough. 10% now, 70,000, that doesn't equate. It needs to be more like 150 to 170,000. The home across the street, that is already $200,000 lower valuation because it hasn't been properly assessed. So I'm asking for an adequate assessment because of the quirkiness. We're a unique subset, not my home alone, the cluster. We're weird. We're weird because the Count of Canmore tried to force this idea that we're low income. 1.8 million, low income, everybody. Woohoo! Yeah, I see the look on your face, I agree. So the reality is all I'm trying to say is we sell for less than the assessed value. That's not what the assessed value is supposed to be. And when I look at the valuations, ours does not align with our neighbors. I think that's it. Noise, land, layout. The noise they agreed with, they offered 70,000. That's the only thing. She's going to present her side. I was really shocked. We already spoke about this, actually. We spoke on Friday. Because when the reply came back, the response, it then said, oh no, we walked through your backyard. We disagree. The noise is not a thing. So then I called her on Friday and I said, wait a sec. I'm confused. This feels very disingenuous. And that's the word I used, was disingenuous. She's like, well, it's not meant to be confrontational. It's not meant to be disingenuous. But this costs money. This costs time. They're their own company. They have a budget they're trying to hit. So they're like, we're going to try and get as much out of you as we can. All right. At the same time, on Friday, after that happened,
Just to clarify, I never did say we're going to try and get as much out of you as we can.
No.
Nor that we were trying to
you were going to
save
stick
our-
with the initial assessment.
Nor that we were trying to save on the budget, just.
However,
You're-
you did say that it costs money to be here.
I said for everybody.
Yep, you did, yourself included, and everybody.
I'm just going to stop this at the moment. Your objection is noted. We'll put the weight on the comments that
Yeah.
we deem necessary. And
I also, one thing I want to just say, though, you also on Friday offered me that 70,000 again to do the reduction and not have this happen. And I would have done it had it been that 10% reduction. But the checkbox isn't enough because it doesn't address our land value. So even on Friday, after the reply happened, I was still offered that reduction. But the reply and the response still says that noise isn't a thing. That is disingenuous, regardless of if this costs money. I mean, I'm taking a day off as well. I would rather not be here. And so, thank you for your time. That's my presentation. And, yeah, good luck.
thank you for your presentation and your comments. I'm going to ask that you stay relatively close because this is the respondent's opportunity to ask you questions on your evidence. I have no questions. No questions? Thank you. All right. Please sit down. It's time for the respondent to present their evidence. Oh, that's a good point. Does anyone have any questions for the complainant? I don't have any questions either. We'll now hear the respondent's evidence. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. We are here regarding tax roll number 17413 at number 333 Casale Place, and we are asking for the board to confirm the 2025 assessment year assessment for the 2026 taxation year at $1,701,000. So as outlined in the testimonial of evidence on page 3, the respondent will demonstrate 3 key points. First, that assessments must be prepared annually. Second, the legislated valuation standard is market value. And third, assessments must be prepared in a fair and equitable manner in accordance with Alberta legislation. So these principles form the foundation of the assessment process and our position within this complaint. So now turning to the subject property on pages 4 through 6, we have pictures of the exterior of the property, the back, which was taken on June 13th when we did an exterior inspection of the property. We also have the location maps, so pages 5 and pages 6 of our disclosure, which shows the location within the neighborhood for the subject property. So these maps are particularly relevant because they show the surrounding development, but also because they show some of the relevance towards the complainant's concerns with the highway proximity and the traffic influence. So the imagery clearly demonstrates that the property is not directly adjacent to Highway 1, and it is separated by significant physical features and intervening lands. So on the assessment summary on page 7, the subject property is classified as a residential detached property on an 8,155 square foot lot, and the property is zoned R1BE, which is the residential detached plus entry-level lot. So just to touch on just that piece there for just in comparison to the complainant's information on their C2 page 1. So that entire section that was highlighted is all the R1BE zoning, so they're all subject to the same development restrictions. There's just that the small part in gray is all that doesn't have future allowances. So all of those properties that were referenced by the subject property, or the complainant, so the lots 2 to 16 up along the top in the light gray color, those are the only properties that actually get an additional choice for that B that is shown on the 3.541 of the complainant's information, so that B. The rest of that zone 3 for R1BE is all subject to that A. So the subject property and the accompanying units that are allowed through that addendum or the revised Schedule A actually have the additional B, which is they actually have the choice of not having the size of the suite and the primary area prescripted, they actually can blend those as long as the overall size doesn't change.
Sorry, can you say that last part again? I missed it.
Sure. So, and this is in the complainants document. There's C2, page 1. You'll see that the revised Schedule A for the bylaw was printed out. And so under the A, what that is the entire zoning. So if she had provided above what the actual zoning was, this is where a principal residence use can have no more than 130 square meters of gross floor area. And the accessory dwelling unit attached can have no more than 84 square meters. So the B, which impacts the lots 2 through 16, it actually allows that additional discretions so that as long as they don't go greater than that 214 meters squared, they can choose the proportion between the suite and the primary living area. So it gives them flexibility to have a larger suite or smaller suite than the rest of the zone.
Sorry, am I allowed to say something, or do I have to wait?
You'll have an opportunity to ask questions after.
So beginning on page 8, I'm going to review the legislative and valuation framework under which the assessment was prepared. So assessments in the town of Canmore are prepared in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. The legislation requires that municipalities prepare assessments that represent market value through the application of mass appraisal. Market value is defined as the amount a property might reasonably be expected to realize if sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer in an open market. And for the current assessment year, market value must be an estimate as of July 1st, 2025. We also explain the concept of mass appraisal. So unlike fee appraisal, prepared for a single property, mass appraisal groups similar properties into common groups, common characteristics are identified, and valuation models are then developed to reflect market behavior, and those same valuation models are applied back consistently to all of those within their group. This is a methodology required by Alberta legislation, and it is the methodology used to prepare the subject properties assessment. So at the bottom of page 9 and 10 explains that residential detached properties within the town of Canmore are valued using the market modified cost approach. This approach first values improvements using cost information and then calibrates those values to the market evidence. It is considered an appropriate valuation method because it mirrors the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace and is supported by sufficient market data. The sales used to develop the valuation models were validated and analyzed from July 1st, 2022 through to June 30th, 2025. Those sales are then time adjusted to the legislated valuation date of July 1st, 2025. So the calculation of the subject property for the assessment is shown on page 12. So the market modified cost approach was applied to the subject property's characteristics, and this includes the site area, the dwelling size, the age, the basement finish, the garage, their quality of construction attributes. The application of the model resulted in an assessed value of $1,701,000. And this assessment is therefore derived from a standardized valuation model which was consistently applied to the properties within the same grouping. Of note, the complainant mentioned that they do not have a basement suite. They've taken out the kitchen, et cetera, just to make it more of a one-home family. And just to note, we do not have a basement suite on our records for this property. We just have them entered as basement finish. So now onto page 13, I'll move on to the analysis and argument section. The first issue addressed is the preparation of annual assessments. The complainant has referenced assessments and comparisons that imply that prior assessments should influence the current year's assessment. Alberta legislation does not support that position. Section 285 of the Municipal Government Act requires municipalities to prepare assessments annually. As noted in the decisions that we've cited on pages 13 and 14, assessments are created anew each year and are not based upon prior assessments. The Municipal Government Board in John Yen versus Edmonton confirmed that market value changes are not uniform across a municipality and that year-over-year percentage changes are not a valid valuation technique. Similarly, the Alberta Court of Queen's Bench in Globex confirmed that prior assessments and prior board decisions are not the starting point for subsequent assessments. So the question before the board is whether the subject property's assessment reflects the market value as of July 1st, not whether the subject property increased at varying amounts compared to other neighboring properties. And then the next issue, I'm on page 14, concerns the complainant's argument regarding entry-level housing zoning restrictions. The complainant submits that the development restrictions associated within this R1BE zoning negatively impact value. The respondent submits that these restrictions do not justify a reduction in the assessment. So, as mentioned, we do have the information on the zoning that the complainant has provided, which does show that there is a proportion for the majority of the R1BE zoned properties. A proportion is specified that it cannot be more than for primary dwelling and cannot be less than for the suite. So that zoning is applicable to all of the other properties within the zoning that we used in our analysis. And we do feel that the zoning applicable to the subject property is already recognized within the assessment model. It is applied uniformly throughout the neighborhood. And then more importantly, the complainant has not provided any market evidence demonstrating that purchasers pay less for properties because of these restrictions. Assessment complaints must be supported by market evidence, not speculation regarding future development opportunities. So the respondents' comparables are all subject to the same zoning and development restrictions, and they therefore provide direct evidence as to how the marketplace values these properties. The sales demonstrate that the market supports the assessed value despite the restrictions identified by the complainant, where the complainant actually has more options for variation in the suite mix versus a lot of the other properties that would have more restrictions. So turning to page 16, we provide our sales evidence. The sales used are all located within the same neighborhood as the subject property. They have a similar quality of construction and finishes, and they're all zoned R1BE. The sales comparison map on page 17 illustrates the close proximity of these to the subject property. So page 18 addresses the respondents' concerns regarding highway noise and highway adjacency. So we did do an exterior inspection, as referenced by the complainant, of the property on Saturday, June 13th. And at that time, we had an assessor out in the field looking and listening to the difference of the traffic sounds on one side of the road versus the others. The assessor at the time took the time to talk to some of the neighbors to ask about the impact of the noise on their property versus, talked to even some of the interior lots there and asked, which side of the road would you prefer to be on? And I know this isn't evidence, it's hearsay, but the assessor did not get any indication from anybody in the neighborhood that there was any impact due to the traffic. There was note of the discussion of an amount that we would have been prepared to reduce the assessment to. We are going to look at that specific area in the future to see if there is any kind of market evidence that would support any kind of change in their assessed value. But at the time of the inspection, based on the information that the complainant has provided, there just is no support for it. Although we thought just, to be fair, we know that The Parkway Road is behind them as well. We could provide them with that adjustment and then look at correcting all of the rest of the neighborhoods in the future. However, the adjustment that the complainant was looking for was far superior to anything that we would be even contemplating providing, due to the fact that the adjustment of a 10% for traffic is extreme and would be used for a lot busier roads and traffic influences than the complainant was asking for. So the issue before the board really is not whether the traffic exists, but whether the buyers are going to pay less for these properties because of it. The market evidence doesn't really support that conclusion. We've provided comparables that also abut the same sort of locational adjustments that the subject property does. The subject property is not directly adjacent to Highway 1, and it's separated by a landscaped area as well. Furthermore, our comparable sales are all located within the same neighborhood. They have the same general traffic influences, the same zoning, and the adjusted sale price of 330 Cassell Place at approximately $2 million strongly supports the conclusion that the market continues to recognize substantial value within this neighborhood despite this alleged influence. So now on page 20. The respondent addresses the assessment comparables provided by the complainant. The complainant relies primarily on 205 Cassell Place and 330 Cassell Place. However, when we're doing assessment comparisons, we require consideration of all the relevant property characteristics rather than simply comparing assessment totals. There are differences which exist in the lot area, the floor area, the basement finish, renovation history, the basement suite, whether they have one or not, and any other physical characteristics. So for example, 205 Cassell Place was renovated in 2020. It does not have a walkout basement, while 330 Cassell includes a basement suite and sold at an adjusted value substantially higher than the subject assessment. When these characteristics are considered, of which we have more details further on in our respondent package, so when they're considered, the assessments are both fair and equitable. So then finally, just to summarize, the complainant requests a reduction to $1,560,000 based on concerns regarding zoning restrictions, development limitations, highway noise, and comparisons to neighboring properties. The respondent submits that none of these arguments are supported by market evidence. The assessment has been prepared in accordance with Alberta legislation using accepted mass appraisal methodology. The comparable sales that we provided support the assessment, including sales within the same neighborhood as the subject property. They have the same zone and the same traffic influences identified by the complainant. So the differences between the assessments are explained by differences in the physical characteristics and the market behavior. More importantly, the complainant has not demonstrated that these alleged influences result in any measurable reduction in market value. So accordingly, we respectfully submit that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $1,701,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. Ms. Vanderbeek, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the respondent. I'd ask that we try our best to listen to each other's responses and questions, and if necessary, I'll ask that questions be directed through the panel.
I guess you said 205 does not have a walkout basement. Yeah, that is what's in your file. Steve said
Yes,
that as
yep,
well.
yep.
That's an error. It's a full walkout basement. And he admitted that when he did the walkthrough, and he was like, oh, if that's the case, then our files are wrong.
Yeah, and that's where we would review
Yeah,
the
and that's where they
information
need to
later.
reevaluate. They are based in St. Albert, they're not local. So there's that. The other thing was, part of my argument is that the land we have, which is highly valued, we can't use because of the zoning. And so we have a higher valuation because of the size of our lot. You said that our zone, we're able to change the size of the suite. There's a few things to have a legal suite. You have to have separate heat. and you have to have fire separation. All these homes have in-slab heating. So it's separate in the basement. There's in-slab heating in the basement, but not the rest of the house. So to change that, I would have to change in-slab heating.
Is there a question in there for the respondent?
Oh, sorry. Only questions here, not responses.
Yes.
Apologies. Okay, no,
Okay, okay.
sorry.
Thank
You're
you.
going to ask questions now, so you can sit down
Fair
for a
enough.
bit.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
You'll
this-
have another opportunity.
We're going to move to the board's opportunity to ask questions. Any questions?
Just one question for you with regard to the $70,000 reduction for the noise. Is that something that would still be supported at this time?
As I mentioned, that adjustment, that was made originally by the assessor who was talking with the complainant before they had gone out and inspected the property. We got nothing substantive from the inspection demonstrating that an adjustment was warranted. However, in communication with the complainant prior to the hearing, because that adjustment had been offered, I guess, prior to us looking at the area, we decided that we would still honor that amount if she so chose, but still at the time did not feel that that was sufficient to satisfy her demands.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. Through the chair, you mentioned that a 10% traffic reduction would be extreme. When you're looking at adjustments for traffic, what is the percentages that you usually use for what types of roads?
Yeah, so if we're looking at traffic adjustments, so the majority of our traffic adjustments are sitting around 5% for the land, not for the entire assessment, but for the land component of the property. When we're looking at the range of adjustments, we have 7%, which is for much busier roads, and then we have 10, and then for 15 for those properties that are directly adjacent to the highway. So those are properties such as in Teepee Town, where they back right onto the highway. And so we look at them because of the mountain terrain. There's obviously sometimes the aerial mapping isn't reflective of the reality of the situation because they may look like they're far away due to the mapping, but they're actually like that kind of way. So we do our review of the properties that way as well. And we do a measure of noise impact, not maybe with the decimal meter, but we can tell some of those adjustments. So we do adjust for, bus routes, so properties that are adjacent to bus routes, commercial properties, obviously going into the downtown. You've got the Three Sisters Highway, those kind of things all have various different adjustments based on the impact to the property owners or to the properties.
Any other questions from the panel? Typically, we wouldn't allow it. I think that in these circumstances, if it's just one question, before we move on to the next segment.
I guess just trying to understand, I had to prove, big part of your argument is that I haven't shown that our cluster of homes that are a unique subset is actually valued at less. Does home assessments, though, comparable home assessments demonstrate, is that an adequate demonstration of obviously, because a home assessment is by the market value, right? By the averages, it's done the same way, the same system.
Are you talking about a home appraisal?
Home appraisal, sorry,
Yep,
yeah.
that's
Home appraisal, so the assessments, the assessments that you guys provide, so
Okay.
the home assessments, those are home assessments, they would be indicative of the appraisal, right? Of the comparable data and things like that?
The assessments that we have were prepared based on, they're reflecting the zoning in your area, your location, things like that. So any of the differences in the property assessments would be attributable to the differences in the property characteristics themselves.
Okay, but being closer to a sale price of that home itself would have an impact, is that correct?
Depending on the stratum, so we're looking at all the sales of the properties. So if there is one sale, maybe, because we do have outliers as well. We have other houses that may sell with poor condition or less desirability. So it could, but not necessarily without looking at it.
Okay, so, and a kitchen should be worth less. If you have two kitchens, it's worth more. I understand that, correct?
That is how our calculations are derived, yeah. So if you had a basement suite, which would include a kitchen,
Yeah.
it would have a higher value to it than if you had just basement finish, yes.
Okay. So I guess I still, it seems like the homes that are valued less than mine had more recent sales than the ones that are, so I'm just, how does that connect to the home specifically?
So
Like
were
if
you-
there's averages done, I'm just trying to understand if there's averages done for areas, right? And then when there's a sale, it seems to connect to that home for roughly 5 to 6 years. And
no.
then it seems to disappear, that sale.
Yeah, no, so one of the things that happens when we do get sales, often if they've been listed through MLS, we do get additional information on the property that maybe we hadn't had before, so things like renovations where they didn't take permits out on. So, but the other thing is that those sales that occur, so we showed 5, but there's more within the location. So those sales that occur, they all form the framework for the mass appraisal model that we're creating for the stratification. And so once those models are derived by those sales, they're actually applied consistently to all of those properties within the same stratum. So it's not like one model is being applied to a sold property versus a non-sold property. It's just we're using the sales as proxy for the unsolds, which are shown through the assessment.
Then my follow-up question is, how come some of the homes' assessed values are up to $250,000 with comparable square footage and even more square footage for above grade,
Yeah, and so
and with 2 kitchens?
Yeah, so the differences in the property assessments, as mentioned, are directly related to the differences in the property characteristics. So the proportion of that is based on the mass appraisal models. So the mass appraisal models, as mentioned, are applied consistently back to that same stratum. So everybody's being treated equally based on the data characteristics that they have. So a sale, if you're looking at a sale to assessment ratio, so what a sale is versus their assessment that we have in there adjusted to the market conditions of the valuation date, we will have a range in those values because we're using all of the sales to prepare the mass appraisal models. So you'll have some properties that sold or have a time adjusted sale price above what they're assessed at, and you'll have some that are below, but we're using the larger group to create those models. So you're going to have a range in
so
the ratios.
I guess my property would be because we have more land.
You have more land,
That's
yeah.
a bigger part of.
You have a significantly larger lot
And
than
the
a lot
walkout
of the others.
basement.
And the walkout basement is
Which
also
is part of
valuable.
my argument that those shouldn't be part of it. Okay, now I
Yeah, but-
understand. I just wanted to
and-
understand why, because
Yeah, and even if,
I'd be quite happy with 250,000 less, just putting it out.
sure, and the thing with the lot size, I mean, there are cases where, being able to develop larger properties on it, that definitely, I mean, if you have a percentage more that you could add on to and add an addition onto, that would be more valuable. But this entire zoning is restricted to how large the property can be and the footprint can be. But that doesn't mean that the lot size doesn't hold utility. It still means you have a larger lot, a larger yard than some of the neighbors that are across the street from you. So just because you can't build more on it doesn't mean having a larger lot is not valuable.
Thank you. I assume you have no further questions as you've sat down. I think we're finished with our questions. We'll move on to summation of arguments. So this is a sort of opportunity to summarize your arguments.
Okay, as the complainant, just to summarize, as well as just to address a few not questions but statements. You mentioned that 15% reduction would happen for a place like Teepee Town that backs right on to 15%? Yeah, 15% reduction for a place like Teepee Town that backs right onto Highway 1. I would be quite happy with that reduction in our property. And I think through the picture of not only Highway 1, but also Three Sisters Parkway right in my backyard, right off our deck, without any obstruction, is an indication that, and I would be more than happy with that reduction. However, I've also shown the other 2 factors, the fact that a walkout basement is valued at more. It's not a value add for buyers on our street. So Steve might have talked to renters. They love living in our basements. And you mentioned that our area, the number 2 number 16, essentially the noisy side, I call it, that they're allowed to change the size of their suites. That's all well and good, except we have to change in-slab heating in order to legally do that. So in-slab heating would be about $100,000, because I have looked into it in order to change that size. So to change the size of my suite, because you have to have separate heating for the suite versus the rest, and fire separation. So easy to say, not easy to implement. So nobody does it. Not a single home has changed the layout. The other thing was, so land, again, noise is the biggest thing, which is also the devaluation for the land. So having more land when it's noisy, I shouldn't say that. I've lived there for 14 years. I've hosted 2 parties in my backyard. Every other one I've hosted on a 150 square foot patio in the front of our house because it's quiet. Every single one. It's just a reality of human nature. We like to be in a quieter space. I also don't have access to my backyard because of the walkout basement. I don't have stairs off the kitchen. The comparable valuations, again, homes right beside me are valued at $100,000 less. And across the street that are selling for more are valued at $250,000 less. I hear the argument that it's an average and it's an assessed value. I don't see that in the assessments. I don't see the averages. I hear that there are also mistakes, and she's admitted 205, they made a mistake. It is a walk-up basement, they don't have it marked as that. It was never my intention to rat out a neighbor, but my entire case is really just to show that the value adds of my home are not actual value adds for buyers. The land is not a value add for buyers, and the noise, I think we're equivalent to TP Town, to the noise of Highway 1 as well as Three Sisters Parkway right behind us. And looking at the bell curve, TP Town's actually a little bit below Highway 1, and if you look at sound curves, it's actually a little quieter in TP Town than in our backyard. If I'm back here in a few years, again, I don't want to be. This is my goal. 100% my goal to come here today is to actually find a solution that endures beyond this yearly assessment. I want to have a change in our grouping, in our cluster of those 6 homes, especially because of the noise, in order to see something that stands beyond this 1-year assessment, because none of us want to be doing this. So thank you for your time. The ARB, I really appreciate it, as well as Dan and Steve has been great too. They have been great to work with, as much as I still think it's disingenuous, the whole 70,000 and the rebuttal, because they do agree with me. All right, thank you for your time, and that is all. I hope I'll not see you again.
Thank you for your submissions, Ms. Vanderbeek. Ms. Bannerman, anything in response?
Sure, thank you. So just in our summary, and there's a couple things that came up about, just before I go too far into the summary, there's a couple things that came into regarding basements requiring their own heating. I'm not a planner, but there's nothing in the land use bylaw to say that it has to be in slab heat versus furnace heat. That would be something that planning would have to specify, but that also wasn't anything that was introduced into evidence. Because obviously putting in slab heat would be substantially more expensive than a furnace. So just to summarize our position, the complainant has requested a reduction to $1,560,000 based on concerns regarding her zoning restrictions, some development limitations, the highway noise, and comparisons to neighboring properties. And we submit that none of these arguments are actually impacting the market value and certainly haven't been demonstrated with any sort of market evidence to support it. I think that the comment here was that if they were given a 15% traffic adjustment, they'd be very happy with it. Well, I'd suggest that most property owners would be happy with a 15% traffic adjustment. However, these are adjustments that we have determined through market evidence for properties where as I said, most property owners would like the 15% adjustment, but this is where we've seen demonstrated evidence to show that property owners don't want to live directly backing onto the highway, which is why they're not paying as much as other properties. And the other suggestion that was brought up, just briefly, was that they don't have access to their walkout basement, which I think was a misstated. Maybe they don't have direct access, but I don't imagine that they don't have access to their basement from the inside of their home. And you will have last word if you do. You will have last word. Okay. So we do feel that the assessment has been prepared in accordance with Alberta legislation, and we've used accepted mass appraisal methodology. The comparable sales that we provided, all within the same location and zoning and similar property types to the subject property, all support the assessment. The differences between the assessments have been explained by the differences in the physical characteristics of these properties, and we've provided all of the evidence and all of the inputs that go into our models, our valuation models, so that we can show that the subject property is not exactly the same as all of the properties that have been listed, which is why they're assessed at different values and sell for different values. So most importantly, the complainant has not really demonstrated that these alleged influences result in a measurable reduction to the market value. And accordingly, we respectfully submit that the assessment is fair and equitable and reflects the market values of July 1st, 2025. And we request that the board confirm the assessment at $1,701,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. Ms. Vanderbeek, anything to say as the last word goes to you?
I do have access to my backyard. It was the backyard, not so much the basement. I have access to the basement within the house, so yes, I must have misspoke there. I guess I'm trying to argue that I'm a subset of those 6 homes that are facing Highway 1. That's my primary argument. The most a home has ever sold for in those 6 homes is $1.141 million. $1.141 million. That's the most a home in there has ever sold for. They sit forever on the market if you try and sell them. People don't want to live in those 6 homes. We are the teepee town of Casali Place. And the other one before that, 1.056 million, and the one before that was 850,000. And then I bought it 680. People don't buy them, people don't sell them because they don't sell, and I'm a subset in that 6 homes. And I know this isn't evidence that was presented ahead of time. I'm not a lawyer!
Sorry.
I'm not a lawyer, but this is part of the argument in the sense of we are talking about comparable values, and we're talking about assessed and average market value, and we're comparing valuations of subsets. Because the whole argument,
Ms. Bannerman,
the
your
whole
objection's
argument
noted.
is mass appraisal and groups similar properties. My argument is grouping similar properties. That's my
Understood.
argument, which is part of the thing, is grouping similar properties, which is part of their argument. I want to
Understood.
group those 6 properties together. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation and for your helpful presentations. At this time, I'd like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today during this proceeding.
Sorry, I took so long.
Not a problem. I'll now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We'll make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. This time, does anyone need a few minutes before the next hearing?
Yes.
We'll take, how many, 5, 10? 5 minutes. We'll take 5 minutes break now before proceeding to the next hearing, which is Tax Roll 124283, 3 Prospect Court. And welcome to the Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for Tax Roll 14283, located at 3 Prospect Court. I'll start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Peter Moreland Giraldo, and I am the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are,
Good morning, Anita Furlan.
on my right.
Tanya Foubert.
Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? And any concerns with any of us being on the panel? Ms. Bannerman? No. I'll now ask that the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. So this is me? Yeah, push the
Good.
button, introduce yourself. And would you please state your name for the record and indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint?
My name is usually Jim Emmett, and yes, I am the sole owner now of 3 Prospect Court.
Thank you. Now for the respondent.
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LRB's standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent, and then the panel. Next, the respondent will have the opportunity to present their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and the panel. And then the complainant, Mr. Emmett, will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Apologies. As there was no rebuttal evidence submitted, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of Ms. Bannerman. And then finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or a problem comes up during the hearing, please let the panel know as soon as possible, and we can address those as they come up. I'll take this time to remind everyone to please turn off their mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure as laid out?
None for me.
I see both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility at a later point. If any such questions arise, we'll deal with them and strike material as necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Mr. Emmett?
I think I heard that, but yes.
Sorry, do you need me to speak louder?
I don't think so. I'm managing.
Sounds good. Madam Clerk, the evidence as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For Tax Roll 14283, the evidence received is complainant package marked C1. It's the complaint form of 5 pages. For respondent package marked R1, it's the respondent disclosure of 64 pages.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any preliminary matters or issues that need to be addressed before we begin? Mr. Emmett, do you have any concerns you want to raise before the hearing begins?
Concerns I want to raise? No, I think I'm on course.
Ms. Bannerman? No. All right, Mr. Emmett, we're ready to hear your evidence if you're set to go ahead.
Great. It's actually Dr. Emmett, not that that matters at this point in my life, but as a comment. I think you're going to be treated to a low-tech presentation. I'd like to discuss a theme that I think is very important, and I thank the group for tolerating what may be a bit of an aberration to your usual. What I'd like to do is present different chunks of our life very quickly with the phrase, do it, the phrase that operated for most of our lives. That is my wife, Dr. Josie Wilson, a physician, and myself. So the themes would be from Vancouver to Morley, In the 1960s, you had to be there to do it. We started the Stoney Health Center, lived with the Stoneys at Morley for 5 years. Moving from Calgary, or to Calgary from the land of Stoney, we were dismayed with obstetrics and its standards, and both of us worked, particularly Josie, to make a huge change in the nature of care for women. Josie became president of the medical staff of the city of Calgary. Again, the phrase "do it" applies to the sort of style that we had and enjoyed. After a general practice career in Calgary, we faced the question of retirement. We asked what part of Canada is least well served and has the worst problems possible. That was Nunavut. We spent 10 years working with the Nunavut government, Again, the theme, do it. Now, why would I relate chunks of our lives to the phrase do it? And that relates to this hearing very personally, and it's this. When we completed our house, when it was at the stage of wallboard, that is only wallboard, the estimates to complete that work were far above what we felt we could manage. We looked at each other and said, why don't we do it ourselves? And this is the phrase, do it. We completed our home ourselves. Josie said, Jim, we should do it all. We did all of the interior finishing. We completed bathrooms. We did all of the built-ins in our home. We completed the kitchen, and we did most of the interior furniture. The house was around the concept of Frank Lloyd Wright, and the detail was arts and crafts. The point in mentioning this is that my concern as people look at our home is that they have comparison, particularly, say, to 17 Prospect Heights. I knew that family, I knew that house well. To make any contrast between our home, its value, and 17 Prospect Heights would be quite inappropriate. In our situation, there was not a story of 3.5 to 4 months of constant sub-trades coming and going through the home, as there were at 17 Prospect. There was no grand entrance, there was no massive fireplace, no premium marble stone throughout all of the structure, and no elevator, no major staircase, and no hot tub. My comment is that our home we respect and are happy with. We did it ourselves, but it's in a different class in terms of economic comparison, one to the other. So that's my comment as a general theme. It's important to me as a person, as I'm here today, as I leave, to think that that has been recognized if it fits into any of the evaluations and comments as to the value of the house. Now I have preparation notes. I've covered the theme. I have a series of 6 points, and I'll just go through those if that's the style that you would prefer. The strongest point in my feeling is that the town's evaluation relies on 2 homes that were actually sold within the evaluation period, 13 Van Horn and 17 Prospect Heights. Now, for me to get this information has been a struggle, and if I'm not accurate, hey, I'm happy to hear that from anybody. 17 Van Horn is the closest in size to our home. My home now. My wife passed away from ovarian cancer. The floor area of 13 Van Horn is 4,200, and it was built in 2021. My home is effectively aged from 1999. So a difference of about a quarter of a century between the 2 homes. The town has indicated Van Horn's time-adjusted sale price. I wasn't exactly sure what that was, but that was $6,985,400. And this was below, obviously, the evaluation at $7,100,000. I guess I have a question. A newer home, similar in size, also backing on the Bow River, sold at a time on adjusted basis, and those are terms I'm not too used to, for under $7 million. How does my older home support an assessment of $7,100,000? Staggering number for me. So my first point is that. The second point would be the town's own evidence describes my property as having the oldest effective age of the group, 1999, compared to 2007 for Prospect Heights and 2021, I believe, for Van Horn. My question would be, how much downward adjustment was applied for the age and condition of my home? And where does that show up when my assessment sits so close to two newer homes? My next point would be, reports say that the square footage figures are overestimated. I'm not sure how to make sense of that. The home has 7 levels, and different people have evaluated the square footage and the amount, and they all come out with different answers. So that's an open question to me. We got an iGuide evaluation of it, and that's what I think the records are using, and I appreciate that. Another thought as a point to me is, and I have trouble expressing this, but the lot and river premium. My lot is the largest of the group at 14,420 square feet, a staggering number to me, and it backs on the river. How was that premium and the larger lot actually quantified in my assessment compared to the others? A small point perhaps, but I'm looking for any detail that brings fairness to the full evaluation. The in-period sales of the two sales are $6,985,400 adjusted and $8,675,000. My home is older than both, significantly, with the personal involvement that you've heard me discuss. Why does it sit at $7,100,000 rather than near the lower of the two homes quoted? I think there are other points that are less specific that you might apply the word graceful to. The opinion of value is dated at April 2026 and is a real estate professional market opinion, not a formal appraisal. I had a formal appraisal done at one point by the Bank of Montreal, and it came in at $5.8 million, and that was about 2 years ago. The sales data behind it, especially for 17 Prospect Heights, is valid, and within that period I recognize. Two of the comparables in evidence, 156 McNeil and 181 Kearney, sold after July the 1st, 2025. I agree that the background is trend only and not value setting. I appreciate that. Price per square foot is very intriguing because the home on a price basis for myself is way up relative to the home sold at 17 Prospect Heights. And I've tried to make the point clearly and personally that the input to our home was direct us and has far less sophistication and far less value than the home that I knew well at 17 Prospect. I cannot understand the respective difference, and it's a bit personal to me, as I've told you. I think that concludes my points and review. I have no additional practical points to make. I'll have versions of thoughts, I'm sure, but there you go, people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Emmett. At this time, it's the respondent's opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. I'll turn to my panel members. No questions? No questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmett. It's now the respondents' opportunity to present their evidence.
You want to use this? Sure.
If you don't mind, my
Oh, I-
binder's so big.
I don't mind too much.
And you get to sit down and take a break.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you. We're here regarding tax roll number 14283 at 3 Prospect Court in Canmore. And we are requesting that the board confirm the assessment of the subject property at $7,100,000. So beginning with our page 3, the respondent will demonstrate 3 key points. Assessments must be prepared annually. The legislated valuation standard for the subject property is market value, and assessments must be prepared fairly and equitably during using mass appraisal techniques as prescribed by Alberta legislation. So turning to page 4, we can see the exterior of the subject property, and pages 5 and 6 show aerial and location mapping for the subject property, showing its premium location located directly abutting the Bow River. Turning to our assessment summary on page 7, the property is an R1 zoned property and assessed as a residential single detached dwelling with the assessment at $7.1 million. So I'm going to address the legislative framework beginning on page 8. Property assessments in Alberta are governed by the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. Assessments must represent market value as of the legislated valuation date and must be prepared through the process of mass appraisal. So market value is the most probable price that a property might be expected to realize between a willing seller and a willing buyer in an open market. Mass appraisal requires assessors to analyze groups of comparable properties, identify common property characteristics, and apply standardized valuation models across an entire class of properties. The legislation requires assessors to estimate the market value through mass appraisal and to ensure that all the assessments meet provincial quality standards. The evidence before the board demonstrates that the subject property was prepared in accordance with these legislative requirements. So on page 9, it explains the approach used to value detached properties within the town of Canmore, and that's the market modified cost approach. So under this approach, all improvements are first valued based on the cost approach, and then the values are adjusted to reflect the current market conditions based on sales transactions. This methodology mirrors the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace, and we feel that it's a good reflection of the determining market value for the properties. So sales occurring between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2025 were analyzed and used to develop valuation models. These sale prices are then adjusted for time to reflect the market conditions as of the legislated valuation date of July 1st, 2025. This process is required by provincial assessment standards and ensures that all sales are compared on a common valuation date basis. So turning to page 12, the assessment calculation demonstrates how the market modified cost approach was applied to the subject property in order to produce the assessment value of $7.1 million. The subject property is a 4,157 square foot bungalow with a walkout basement, and it is classified as a good custom. Now just move on to page 13. The first issue is the requirement that assessments be prepared annually. We've cited several board and court decisions confirming that each assessment year stands on its own. Assessments are created anew each year and not based on prior year assessments, prior board decisions, or percentage increases from previous years. The only question before the board is whether the assessment reflects the market value as of July 1st, 2025. So the second issue, and that's found on our page 14, is the complainant's reliance on a price per square foot analysis. So we go further to explain why price per square foot is not a recognized valuation methodology when used in isolation. Appraisal theory recognizes that this type of value per unit it could be valuable or useful, but that's only when we're comparing apples to apples or identical properties or very, very similar properties. But it's not a valuation method, and it certainly relies on the characteristics being equal. Property characteristics such as location, the lot size, the quality of construction, the age or effective age of the property, whether it has basement development, and the overall market appeal must also be considered. And this is especially important when we're considering that the subject property abuts the Bow River, and so to include properties that aren't at least abutting the Bow River would certainly not be apples to apples. So the board in Tony Price specifically rejected the use of an average price per square foot calculation without adjustments for differing property characteristics. The opinion of value provided by the complainant relies almost entirely on a price per square foot comparison, and actually notably total square foots. That includes both above and below grade areas in it. So it's not just the above grade price per square foot, it's total area. So when we're preparing assessments, and even as reflected in the real estate market, above grade square footage is a premium versus, or it is more valuable than below grade square footage. So this opinion of value with the unit per square foot or the total area per square foot, it ignores many of the features that contribute significantly to the subject property's market value. So then we've actually addressed post facto sales on our pages 15 through 18. So the legislation there and numerous board and court decisions establish that sales occurring after July 1st, 2025 should only be used to confirm market trends. They should not be used to establish market value as of the valuation date. So these sales were not known or knowable at the time that the assessments were prepared, and they might be reflective of changes in the market after that valuation date. And this is important because much of the complainant's evidence relies on information that falls outside of the legislated valuation period. So turning to page 18, we just want to go a little deeper into the complainant's opinion of value that they submitted as their disclosure. So first, the document is dated as of April 2026, and this is approximately 9 months after the valuation date. So this report is relying on sales, as I mentioned previously, that occurred after that valuation date and were therefore not known or knowable to the assessor when they were preparing the assessments, nor has there been any kind of analysis to see if the difference in those sale prices after the valuation period could be accounted to for changes in the market conditions from the July 1st date. And then more importantly, the disclaimer contained within the report expresses, and I believe that's page, Grayson was right, I should have taken it up with me. So that's the page 3, I believe, or the last page of the complainant's submission. And that states the disclaimer that expressly states that it is not an appraisal and does not constitute a formal valuation prepared under QSPAP standards. And so QSPAP standards stands for the Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, and that is basically the quality standards, ethics standards that appraisers use according to the Appraisal Institute of Canada. So accordingly, based on these limitations that were found within this opinion of value, we submit that limited weight should be placed to this document. So this property report also relies on properties that either did not sell within the valuation period or sold after the valuation date, and actually even includes active listings rather than completed market transactions. And the report further fails to properly account for significant differences in location, lot size, the Bow River premium, basement area, quality of construction, the above grade versus below grade living area. As mentioned, they use the total area. In addition, the sizes for these calculations do not match what we have in the assessment database nor the MLS data. So we've provided the assessment, our residential reports for all of these comparables on our pages 39 to 58, as well as the MLS information. And neither of these sources, so the assessment information nor the MLS data, correspond with the sizes that were used on the opinion of value reports submitted by the complainant. And one of the most significant shortcomings that the report attempts to compare properties using the simplistic sale price per square foot, despite the substantial differences between the properties, especially when on a sale price per square foot, you have two inputs. One is the square footage, one is the sale price, and showing that, as we have shown, the calculation of the size is incorrect. So one of the two inputs is incorrect, which severely limits the reliability of that. So now turning to pages 20 and 22, or 20 through 22, our comparable sales do demonstrate that the assessment is reasonable. The comparable properties selected are located within the same neighborhood, possess similar quality of construction, they're all good custom homes, they have similar floor area, similar basement development, and most importantly, they abut the Bow River. These sales also transferred within the valuation period and all occurred prior to the valuation date. So the subject property, as we mentioned, is a one-story or a bungalow with basement property. The comparables that we've provided are two-story with basement properties. So although the structure class is different, generally bungalows are more valuable in the market due to their larger footprint that they have. And there's no stairs, so as people, some people prefer not to have stairs to have to deal with in the market. Yeah, okay, no, but thank you. I wasn't sure what was going on behind my back, so so the sales comparison map on page 21, it does illustrate the close proximity of these properties to the subject property. So the respondent's sales evidence demonstrates that the subject property assessment falls comfortably within the range supported by the comparable market transactions. The floor area of the subject property is smaller, although the lot size is the largest of the comparables chosen. It is also the oldest property chosen, but still fairly reasonable. It is lower than the others to accommodate or to demonstrate that with the smaller, slightly smaller square footage and the age, considering the larger lot size. So turning to page 22, only 17 Prospect Heights represents a strong comparable and sold within the legislated valuation period. The remaining properties either sold after the valuation period, and sorry, this is the sales that were provided by the complainant, and some of them are even active listings. These possess significantly smaller floor areas, much smaller basement areas. They have inferior quality of construction, smaller lot sizes, and they do not back the Bow River with the exception of the 17 Prospect Heights. The property at 181 Carey is particularly weak because it contains less than half of the floor area, less than half of the basement area, significantly smaller site, lower construction quality, and it doesn't abut the river. For these reasons, the respondent submits that the complainant's comparable evidence does not establish that the assessment exceeds market value. So then just to summarize, the assessment was prepared for the subject property in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and the matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. And the assessment reflects the market value as of July 1st, 2025. The complainant's opinion of value is dated 9 months after the valuation date, and it's not a formal appraisal. It also relies heavily on a price per square foot analysis, which is a total square foot per sale price per square foot. Most of the complainant's comparable properties either fall outside of the valuation period or are active listings, and we would suggest are materially inferior to the subject property, with the exception of the one comparable we had also provided. The respondents' comparable sales are located within the same neighborhood. They possess similar characteristics, and they support the assessment of the subject property. Accordingly, the respondent respectfully requests that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment of the subject property at $7,100,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Emmett, do you have any questions for the respondent?
Wow. Questions and comments. When I worked this through, I tried to find points that I felt were important to dialogue on. I've understood the review, and I think the general story of trying to find fairness, with so many parameters, it's noted. My own soul says, I can't believe I have a property worth $7,100,000, Jim. And the inputs that I have been always less. So I guess I'm thinking that way and feeling that way. I wonder the specific points that I tried to isolate with a great deal of time and thought, have they actually been addressed in the record or in your responses? I mean, I found these to be outliers for consideration. I also come back to, I guess, the emotional story of doing our home inside and whether that has an influence and is recognized in the difference between 3 Prospect Court and 17 Prospect Heights. I mean, it would be hard for me to really feel comfortable with this if there were the perceptions of these clever people and your review that didn't acknowledge the importance of that to me, and perhaps the importance to any fair person, if I could say. I have no interest in selling my home. I wish it to be passed on to my kids. So the idea of having something of some value relative to some other value is immaterial to my objectives and soul.
Sorry, Dr. Emmett, I don't mean to cut you off, but do you have any questions at this point for...
The main questions would be, the statement would be, please evaluate what I feel is important and if I expressed well. The questions would be, has this process taken the points that I've identified as being important? And I realize you're not here to do general philosophical reviews, and I apologize for that, but I think the feelings are important. The question, if you ask what is the most specific questions, Jim, it would be, I've got the age point question, I have the comment about the town's own assessments relative to my property. The timings I appreciate. This house is a quarter of a century old relative to newer homes. I just hope the whole process takes those points into consideration. Yeah.
Thank you for that. In the information that you're seeking, the points that you were trying to make, do you have questions about those points? Right now is your opportunity to ask Ms. Bannerman those questions, to make sure that we've heard the responses and can consider them in our deliberations.
Okay, I won't.
And if you cannot have questions too, it's okay.
What's that?
And if you don't have questions of me for the stuff that I've presented, it's okay to not have questions also.
I got it. I think the question is whether I have specific questions about what she's presented, and that's a difference than an observation from me that have we addressed the points that I've raised? Do I have questions on the information she's raised? And I'm now seeing this from everybody. The answer is no, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
I could have shortened all of that. Turn this thing off.
No, it's all good. This is your opportunity to be heard, so we appreciate your comments.
I'm sorry, just couldn't hear the last one.
I said this is your opportunity to be heard, so we appreciate your comments.
I should sit down now?
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Bannerman? I'm just wondering if you could speak to the age of the home and whether and how it was incorporated into the appraisal.
Sure. So as mentioned, we are valuing the properties using the market modified cost approach. As part of that, the first step that we take is to do the cost approach. So as part of that, we are looking at depreciation. So houses, generally, they can live anywhere from 80 to 100 years old, or the life of them is generally anywhere from 80 to 100 years old. So as they get every year older, those components are getting closer to the end of their life. So that's what a depreciation really does, is as the property gets older, those components within the property that are long-lived are getting less and less valuable. So when we're looking at the subject property versus the two comparables that we've provided, he's a year built, 1999, so not that old. I wouldn't suggest that he's near the end of his life, even nearly, but the next oldest house that we have would be the 2007, so that's only 8 years difference between the two properties. And then, of course, the newest one at 13 Van Horn is significantly newer. We recognize that. However, when we're preparing assessments as part of the mass appraisal process, as mentioned, we're looking at all the different components. So we're looking at the lot size, any site attributes, we're looking at square footage, the structure type, quality of construction finishes, but we do account for the age and the total valuation as well, the effective year built.
Thank you. I have no follow-up questions to that, and with no questions from my panel members. Thank you. We'll move on to argument summation. Dr. Emmett, this is your opportunity to give us any last comments or argument that you'd like to make.
No. I think trying to think of any variations or subsections, and I think I've presented my feelings and ideas as well as can. I have no additional news or ideas.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Bannerman, this is your opportunity to provide a summation of your argument.
Okay, just briefly, I do want to state that the assessment was prepared in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment taxation regulation, and that the assessment does reflect the assessed value as of, the market value as of July 1st, 2025. We do feel that the complainant's opinion of value, dated after the valuation date, it's not a formal appraisal, and it relies heavily on the price per square foot analysis. And so we do feel that the respondent's comparable sales are located within the same neighborhood, possess similar characteristics, and support the subject property's assessment. So accordingly, we respectfully request that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment of the subject property at $7,100,000.
Thank you. Any last words in summation, Dr. Emmett?
I have the understanding that this is a very complex story. I do have the hope that the feelings I expressed with respect to our personal contribution to our home and its evaluation are reviewed by people. It is hard for me to understand that this house that is so much older is evaluated to be the same or higher than houses that are new, that are decidedly comparable as best as possible. So I leave with the feeling that the hope that people hear all the inputs and the feelings I have had. I hope that the evaluation of the home is measured in part by realizing a difference in the comparables between the different homes. And I have the view that some of my points weren't specifically dealt with. However, maybe they're not possible to be dealt with. So as a final comment, I hope the information is there. And look forward to your considered opinion. And thank you. Turn this off.
Thank everyone at this time for your cooperation and for your presentations. And Dr. Emmett, in particular, I want to thank you for your service to the Bow Valley and to Canadians. I want to thank you specifically for your service to the Bow Valley, to you and your wife, and offer my condolences for your loss. Momentarily. At this time, I'd like to ask the parties if they've been heard today, or if they feel that they've been heard today, and if they feel that they've received a fair hearing. Do you feel that we've heard your case as you've presented it?
I've been very patient, and I've repeated myself. I spent my medical life listening to people, so me saying things is a bit different. So I appreciate that people have been receptive. Just remember it.
We will. Ms. Benjamin? I'll now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. And that's the end of your hearing. We may need a few minutes before the next one. Madam Clerk has it. Yeah, I think 5 minutes probably. All right, ready when you are. The next hearing is 16683 237 Eagle Terrace Road. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for, I'm going to say it at the end, tax roll number 16683, located at 237 Eagle Terrace Road. I'll start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain the standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Peter Moreland Giraldo, and I'm the presiding officer assigned to this hearing, appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today on my left.
Good morning, Anita Furlan.
And on my right.
Tanya Foubert?
Do either of the parties have any objection to the panel as constituted? I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and indicate whether you are the owner of the property under complaint?
Yep, Philip Wilson, and I'm the owner. In fact, I've been the only owner of that property because I built it.
Thank you. Now for the respondent, please state your name for the record, your organization, and your position with the municipality.
Sure. My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LRB's standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent, and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant and the panel. And then the complainant will have, parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let the panel know as soon as possible and we can address those things as we go. I will also ask at this time that everyone turn off their mobile devices. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with the process as laid out? Both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility at a later time. If any such questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with this procedure? Are there any other preliminary issues that the panel needs to address?
She's going to put the evidence in.
Oh, apologies, evidence. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
For tax roll 16683, we have complainant package marked C1, the complaint form of 2 pages, and the respondent package marked R1, the respondent disclosure of 45 pages.
All right, Mr. Wilson, we're ready. Oh, you have a preliminary issue. Sorry, I missed your hand there. Please make your preliminary argument.
So before any discussion regarding the merits of the assessment, the respondent raises a preliminary issue regarding the complainant's failure to comply with the legislative disclosure requirements. The respondent respectfully requests that the board dismiss this complaint pursuant to sections 460 and 467 of the Municipal Government Act. So I've included the information in the disclosure that I've provided. So as outlined on page 3 of the disclosure, the issues before the board are whether the complainant has met the onus required under section 460 sub 9 of the Municipal Government Act, whether the complainant has met the evidentiary burden necessary to demonstrate the assessment of $2,895,000 is incorrect, and whether the complaint should be dismissed for failure to meet those requirements. So the respondent is not before the board seeking to defend the assessment on its merits today. Rather, we submit that the complaint cannot properly proceed because the complainant has failed to satisfy the procedural requirements necessary to advance this complaint. So beginning on page 6, the respondent addresses the disclosure requirements applicable to all parties appearing before an assessment review board. The notice of hearing was issued by the ARB clerk on May 20th, 2026, and clearly identified the disclosure obligations and timelines applicable to the parties. Pursuant to matters relating to assessment complaints regulation, the complainant was required to disclose documentary evidence, summaries of testimonial evidence, any witness reports, and any written argument no later than 21 days prior to the hearing date. In this matter, the disclosure deadline was June 3rd, 2026. The complainant failed to provide any documentary evidence either to the board clerk or to the respondent by the legislated deadline. The significance of this failure cannot be overstated. The disclosure requirements are not optional and are not merely administrative. They are fundamental components to the procedural fairness. The regulation expressly states that a local assessment review board panel must not hear any evidence that has not been disclosed in accordance with their disclosure provisions. This language is mandatory. So in the MGA and in Alberta law, when the word must is used, it means there's no discretion. There's no discretion on any parties. So the regulation states the board must not hear late evidence. Accordingly, any documentary evidence, written submissions, market information, photographs, analysis, reports, or testimony that were not disclosed in accordance with the legislation are admissible to the board. The respondent would specifically note for the board that this prohibition extends beyond documentary evidence. The complainant cannot circumvent the disclosure requirements by introducing new information through oral testimony at the hearing as well. So if a matter is not disclosed in advance, the board must not hear it. So turning to pages 7 through 11, the respondent addresses the complainant's evidentiary burden. Section 460 sub 9 of the Municipal Government Act places a clear obligation on the complainant. The complainant must identify what information on the assessment notice is incorrect, explain how it is incorrect, indicate what the correct information is, and identify the assessed value being requested. This is not a burden carried by the respondent, it's the burden carried by the complainant. We've included numerous decisions from Alberta courts and assessment review boards and the Municipal Government Board, and they have consistently confirmed that the onus rests on the complainant. So finally, turning to our summary on page 12, the facts before the board are straightforward. The complainant was required to provide disclosure by June 3rd, 2026. No evidence or written argument was provided. The complainant therefore failed to satisfy the legislated disclosure requirements, failed to meet the evidentiary burden imposed by Section 460 sub 9 of the MGA, and failed to provide any admissible evidence capable of supporting reduction in the assessment. As a result, the respondent respectfully requests that the board dismiss the complaint pursuant to its authority under the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and complaints regulation. Thank you.
Thank you for those submissions. Mr. Wilson, do you have anything in response?
Yeah. So I'm not sure why the evidence and the written argument, I have the emails here, and perhaps I should check. Did you use it? No, that's an email correspondence. That's you, or Grace? Sorry, that's an email correspondence.
So, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That's an email correspondence in the inquiry period instead of the appeal period. It occurred prior to the complaint date.
I see.
So perhaps if you could help me, I would like to understand the window
sorry to hear about your loss there.
Can you press the button on the microphone so that,
Sorry.
thank you so much.
But I have one simple argument, I have one simple data point. The data point was provided by them, not by myself. And it was provided prior to June 3rd.
Are those that's the entirety of your response to Ms. Bannerman's argument?
Ms. Bannerman's argument is that I didn't provide any evidence. I did not provide evidence. I'm using evidence from themselves. And it was done in correspondence, in writing, prior to June 3rd.
All right, will, anything in response, Ms. Bannerman?
So just to clarify that during the complaint process, it's separate from our inquiry period where we're dealing with property owners. Many property owners can choose to include that correspondence in their disclosure of evidence. In this case, that was not included by the complainant. And it, as demonstrated in my presentation earlier, the complainant has the onus to demonstrate that their assessment is incorrect and to adhere to the disclosure deadlines that are provided through the legislation or prescribed through the legislation. So we are, again, suggesting that this evidence was not admitted by the complainant or by the respondent and should be not heard, and that we go back to asking the complaint to be dismissed.
And what is your response to the proposition that he's seeking to rely on evidence that you've provided?
I would suggest, as mentioned, it is not the responsibility of the respondent to build a case. The onus is on the complainant to build their case. In this case, they did not disclose any evidence, so we proceeded forward to say that the onus is on them to demonstrate that their assessment is incorrect. Whether they don't agree with us during the inquiry period and then choose not to submit it as evidence to the board is their own choice. But at this point, for this process, I would suggest it's inadmissible.
Thank you. I think we'll probably need a few minutes to discuss, and we'll come back with our determination on that preliminary matter.
Okay, so this is very simple.
Sorry, we're going to take a few minutes to discuss.
Oh, okay.
So we'll adjourn for,
Sure.
let's say,
But just to
10 minutes.
understand their argument, lawyer, they're basically saying that although we had written correspondence prior to June the 3rd, I had to recapitulate that written correspondence to them in a 20-day or whatever it was window. Is that correct? Is that how you understand their argument?
that is how I understand their argument.
Right.
For the complainant, we didn't agree with a change to the assessment during those discussions, which is why the complainant chose to file a complaint. So just because we had discussions and provided them with sales information and information about the assessment process, certainly wouldn't even be evidence at this point that their assessment is incorrect if it were to go to merit.
Thank you. We'll adjourn until 11:35, and we'll come back with our finding. Thank you for indulging us in that deliberation. Having heard the argument and the response, we've determined that the MGA binds our hands in this. The onus is on the complainant to provide documentary evidence and any written argument by the 3rd of June, both to the town's representative and to the town, so that it can be disclosed to the panel. As we have received none, we are granting the preliminary application to dismiss this complaint. So I want to thank you both for your presentations with respect to the preliminary matter. And I will now declare that the hearing is closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. We will provide the written reasons for this decision in writing within 30 days. And the MGA also gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue that decision. We'll make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you, Mr. Wilson, at our earliest opportunity. We'll move now to the next hearing, unless either of my panel members needs a brief break. Does anyone else need a break? All right, the next hearing is for tax rule number 21794. Mr. Mortimer?
No, you can sit down. Sit down.
I'd extend my parking.
No, just sit down, they'll start.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just making sure I have all the documents in front of me before we get started. Madam Clerk, ready? All right. Good morning. It's still morning, and welcome to this Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of the hearing. We're here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll 21794, located at 1340 Three Sisters Parkway. I'll start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Peter Moreland Giraldo. I'm the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are,
Good morning, Anita Furlan.
on my right.
Tanya Foubert.
Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? I'll now have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. If you could please come to the podium, ensure that the button is pressed. I see that it is.
My name is Donald Mortimer, resident of Canmore.
And are you the owner of the subject property? Are you the owner of 1340?
I am.
Okay. Thank you. You can sit down. I'll have the respondent introduce themselves. Could you please state your name, organization, and position with the municipality?
Sure, my name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LARB's standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence, followed by questions from the respondent and the panel. Next, the respondent will present all of their evidence, again, followed by questions from you, Mr. Mortimer, and from the panel. You will have, You'll then have an opportunity to present your final argument and summarize your evidence for the panel. You'll present first, the respondent will summarize next, and then you will have the final word. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let us know as soon as possible, and we'll address those as we go. Are there any questions regarding the procedure today, or is everyone satisfied with how we're going to progress? Satisfied? I see that both parties have exchanged disclosure documents prior to the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all documents for the record now. That, of course, won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility. And if any such questions arise, we can deal with them and strike them from the record if necessary. Is everyone comfortable with that procedure? Okay, Madam Clerk, if you could read the documents into the record.
Thank you. For tax roll 21794, we received complainant package C1, the complaint form of 1 page, complainant package marked C2, the complainant disclosure of 1 page, and the respondent package marked R1, the respondent disclosure of 44 pages.
Thank you. Are there any preliminary matters at this time?
So we're raising a preliminary issue regarding the complainant's failure to comply with the legislated disclosure requirements. We're respectfully requesting the board to dismiss the complaint pursuant to sections 470 and 467 of the MGA. Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment complaints regulation. So as outlined on page 3 of our material, the issues before the board are whether the complainant has met the onus under section 460 sub 9 of the Municipal Government Act, whether the complainant has met the evidentiary burden necessary to demonstrate that the assessment of $1,543,000 is incorrect, and whether the complaint should be dismissed for failure to meet those requirements. So the respondent is not before the board seeking to defend this assessment on the merits today. Rather, we submit that the complaint cannot properly proceed because the complainant has failed to satisfy the procedural requirements necessary to advance the complaint. So now on page 6, the respondent addresses the disclosure requirements applicable to all parties appearing before the Assessment Review Board. The notice of hearing was issued on May 20th, 2026, and clearly identified the disclosure obligations and timelines applicable to the parties. Pursuant to the matters relating to assessment complaints regulation, the complainant was required to disclose documentary evidence, summaries of testimonial evidence, witness reports, and any written argument no later than 21 days prior to the hearing date. In this matter, that disclosure was June 3rd, 2026, and the complainant failed to provide any documentary evidence either to the Assessment Review Board clerk or the respondent by the legislated deadline. So the disclosure requirements are not optional and they're not merely administrative. They are fundamental components of procedural fairness. The regulations expressly states that a local assessment review board panel must not hear any evidence that has not been disclosed in accordance with the previous disclosure provisions. And this language is mandatory. The regulation states that the board must not hear late evidence, and accordingly, any documentary evidence, written submissions, market evidence, photographs, analysis, reports, or oral testimony were not disclosed in accordance with the legislation are inadmissible to the board, either written or oral, verbally. The respondent would specifically note for the board that this prohibition extends beyond documentary evidence. The complainant cannot circumvent the disclosure requirements by introducing new evidence through oral testimony at the hearing. The legislation requires disclosure not only of documentary evidence, but a summary of the testimonial evidence that the complainant intends to present. If a matter was not disclosed in advance, the board must not hear it. The board's jurisdiction is restricted by Section 6 of Matters Relating to Assessment and Complaints Regulation, and this states that a panel must not hear any matter not identified on the complaint form and must not hear any evidence not disclosed in accordance with Section 5. So on our, we have the legislative excerpts later on in our disclosure, but I won't read them to you. The Alberta Court of King's Bench has repeatedly confirmed the importance of these decisions, disclosure provisions. As we've referenced on page 6, Canada Safeway Limited versus Calgary, the court confirmed that the disclosure obligations exist to ensure procedural fairness and to ensure that the parties have adequate notice of the case they must meet. The court further confirmed that the legislation is clear that assessment review boards must not hear evidence that has not been disclosed in accordance with the regulation. And this court also noted that allowing undisclosed evidence would undermine the entire statutory disclosure framework. So now on page 7, we want to address the complainant's evidentiary burden. Under sections 460 sub 9 of the Municipal Government Act, it places a clear obligation on the complainant. The complainant must identify what information on the assessment notice is incorrect, explain how it is incorrect, indicate what the correct information is, and identify the assessed value being requested. This is not the burden carried by the respondent, as it is the burden carried by the complainant. We've included numerous decisions from Alberta courts and composite assessment review boards, local assessment review boards, and the Municipal Government Board, and they've all confirmed that the onus rests with the complainant. And I just want to highlight, because the complainant is here right now, I just want to highlight particular importance as the board's treatment of verbal evidence, as noted on our page 11. The boards have repeatedly held that unsupported verbal testimony should be given no weight. The decisions cited indicate that where testimony is not supported by properly disclosed documentary evidence, it amounts to hearsay and cannot support a change in assessed value. Therefore, if there is new evidence attempted to be introduced by the complainant, such as new valuation arguments, comparable sales photos, market studies, personal opinions, or any other information that was not disclosed by the legislated deadline, the respondent respectfully submits that the board must not hear the evidence, and if it were, in any event, it should be given no weight. So just to summarize, the facts before the board are straightforward. The complainant was required to provide disclosure by June 3rd, 2026. No evidence or written argument was provided before or on this date. The complainant therefore failed to satisfy the legislated disclosure requirements imposed by Section 469 of the MGA. And he failed to provide any admissible evidence capable of supporting a reduction in the assessment. As a result, we respectfully request that the board dismiss the complaint pursuant to its authority under the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment complaints regulation. And I just want to mention, just as a side, we did receive an email after the disclosure deadline, so that was, I believe, on June 4th from the complainant with just one line. And after that time, so we already had told him that we're going to proceed with a preliminary matter because he didn't meet his disclosure deadlines. However, we have spoken with him and we have provided him with the information to support his assessment that we feel supports his assessment, regardless of the fact of whether he met the complaint deadline or not. But that information would be considered late evidence if it had been submitted by the complainant. And not admissible as any type of evidence. Even if it were, we felt it would have supported the assessment. However, just as a matter of fairness, we have been still continuing to speak with the property owner to help him understand his assessment.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. Mr. Mortimer, anything in response?
I do, thank you. First of all, this is my first time appearing at a gathering of this nature, hearing. And last year I did have a complaint, and it was served. So I think I have some credibility in that. The third thing is I prepared an analysis of the data. I'm an engineer, so it's an objective appraisal of what's been happening in my community, and it involves 7 other residents in a similar capacity that were, I think, have been served with a very aggressive assessment, and I think the numbers will speak to that if you'll hear my argument. Now, I didn't know that I was supposed to give evidence that I'd have a chance or I agree I should have submitted more evidence, but I thought I'd have an opportunity to argue on the basis of my analysis of the current evidence. So I hope I can still continue. It's a short, again, objective presentation. I had a final note, it just escapes me, but again, I appeal to you that I'll just present numbers. Oh, the one thing was, in my preparing the analysis, I found there was an error in the records of Canmore, it was an error in my assessment, or the announcement of my assessment in last year, where I did get an adjustment. It wasn't adjusted on the records, and I think that has a large bearing on, again, the opinion of the 7 other residents that were in the similar circumstances. They would have looked at this data and said, "Oh, it's still valid," but it's not. So I'd like to have an opportunity to enter into the records that it was an error in a record that I think people look at. So.
Thank you for that. Anything in response, final word? Okay, thank you. We'll take a few minutes to deliberate, 10 minutes, as we did with the last hearing, to deliberate, and we'll return with our response.
Thank you.
right, thank you for allowing us that time to deliberate. We have determined that our hands are bound by the terms of the MGA, and unfortunately that means that we will be dismissing this complaint on the basis that you've not met your onus to provide the necessary evidence to dispute the respondent's position. I'll move now to the closing statements. I'll now declare the hearing closed, having dismissed the complaint. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires that we provide a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We'll make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward the decision to you at our earliest opportunity. That concludes the final hearing of the day. So we'll end the recording.